Hi,
Welcome.
Ken. How you doing? Well, as you can see, we've got a wide range of locomotives sitting here in front of us, and all of these are equipped with Tsunami 2. We're going to talk about a lot of the specific features and a lot of the cool things that we've built into the decoder to try to help make it more realistic and more fun for you. So let's get started. So first we're going to talk about steam decoders, and we're going to show you some of the cool things that we've done with the decoder. First off, in the previous generation we had a lot of different sounds that were grouped by what the decoder was. You had light steam, medium steam, heavy steam, and so on. Now we've grouped all that together and put it into a single decoder called steam, and you can select the different exhaust chuffs, the different whistles, the different bells to match your prototype. You don't have to spend hours in front of a computer downloading sounds to make this match. So for example, the steam decoder is fit in all three of these locomotives, and you can see there's a wide range of different locomotives to choose from. We've got a small American 440 that's a wood burning locomotive. There's no steam dynamo, so there's no electric power, so we've got different lighting effects that you can do, an oil burning headlight. We've got this fairly large medium steam engine there. We've got different exhaust chuffs, different whistles to choose from, different bells. And this has a light dynamo, and then we've got the heavy articulated with a big heavy whistle, articulated exhaust chuff, different bells again. And this one's an oil burning with an atomizer. This one would be a coal burning with an auger. And this, of course, like I mentioned, was the wood burning. So you've got all these choices built into the decoder. You can also select between a lifting or a non-lifting type injector. You can select between a manual Johnson bar or a power reverse. So we've put a lot of features in there, and that's just sound selection. Once we get into the actual operation, you'll see how we've really improved the decoder over the previous generation. All right, so now we're going to show you how to set some of the basic parameters up and choose some different sound effects and get your locomotive fine-tuned to the locomotive that you put the decoder into. So first, let's pick an exhaust chuff. So we're going to move this. It's actually a pretty good exhaust chuff, but let's take a listen and see what other ones are out there. There's a nice loud bark. That seems to be a more subtle. And all I'm doing is changing the value in CV123. We'll go ahead and use that one. Now we need to pick our whistle. This is really the signature of the model of the locomotive. This is what you hear the most and is the most dominant feature. That one's pretty good, but let's see what else we can find. And right now I'm just programming CV120, and there's a list that you can find on our website at SoundTraxx.com under the Manuals tab. There's a full itemized list of all the sound roster that's pre-programmed in this decoder, so that you can go in and find which one matches or which one you like. So I'm just going to pick some random values here. So we'll try. That one's a pretty good one. I don't like that one. Let's move on. There's a good one. We'll use that one. You have 63 whistles to choose from. You have a collection of single chime, 3 chime, 5 chime, and 6 chime to choose from, and there's a full roster of them, like as I mentioned, on our website at SoundTraxx.com. So the next one we'll pick is our bell. And there's a variety of bells programmed into it on the Tsunami 2. You get 12 different bells to choose from and different ring rates. So you can have a hand-rung bell or you can have an air ringer. So let's see what we can find. I don't know, I kind of like that first one I chose, so let's put that back on here. There's a good, nice medium tone bell that's set up as a rare air ringer. So you can see how easy it is to choose and to select the sounds to match the model that you're running in. So next up, we're going to program some DDE, some dynamic digital exhaust. All right, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our dynamic digital exhaust, or DDE. Dynamic digital exhaust alters the way that the exhaust sound is played so that it sounds more like the locomotive's working. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up some auto calibration CVs so that the decoder will do the work for us automatically, so we don't have to push buttons or dial a knob or anything else that we need to do to have the sound change. And it's very simple. We're going to program 3 CVs. We're going to program CV 2.503, and we're going to program that to a value of 255 when the locomotive is moving at speed step 1. This is going to establish the initial amount of energy that the motor takes to move the locomotive light on flat level track. Then we're going to set CV 2.504, and we're going to set that when the locomotive is running at about speed step 20. And the idea is that we're creating a 2-point speed table that the decoder knows how much energy it takes to keep that motor moving on light and on flat level track, so that when the decoder, or when the locomotive is pulling a heavy freight train, or it encounters a grade or starts descending a grade, the DDE processor will know that the motor is using more or less energy and will adjust the chuff sound accordingly. So let's show you how to do this real quick. So we're going to start moving our locomotive forward at speed step 1. Now we're going to program CV 2.503, and to do this we're going to program CV 32 to a value of 2, and that is the 2 dot part of the CV. So we're going to go ahead and program CV 32 to a value of 2. Now with our cab we're going to program CV 503 as we normally would, and we're going to set this to a value of 255, and the decoder is going to auto calibrate the amount of power that it needs at this. That's it, we're done. So now we can stop the locomotive. Now to do the other point, as I mentioned, we're going to have this locomotive moving at about speed step 20 on flat level track. So first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and get the locomotive moving, but since we only have a short place of track here, we're going to go ahead and hold it for a second. And I'm going to get my cab ready. I'm going to program CV 504 to a value of 255, but I haven't pressed the enter button yet. We're going to let it run. We're going to program it, exit out. We're going to stop the locomotive. Now the decoder knows how much energy it takes to move at the 2 speed steps. So internally it's created a graph to determine how fast or how much power needs to be applied to the motor at very beginning of the movement and somewhere around the middle, so it creates a chart. Now we're going to set the sensitivity, and this is the sensitivity is going to determine how sensitive it is to changes in the load. That means when you encounter a grade, you can determine how much the DDE processor is going to change the chuff. You can determine how little it's going to, and that's really something that is up to you to decide. You can play with it and see how you like it. There's no wrong answer here. So just to get started here, I'm going to program CV 2.512, and since CV 32 is already set to 2, all I need to do is program CV 512, and I'm going to set that to say around 35. It's a fairly low sensitivity. You have a range from 0 to 255, but let's start it out here and see how it works. The next thing we need to do is add a little bit of momentum, and this is just saying how long it takes the locomotive to get to the commanded speed steps, basically simulating the heavy train behind it. So we're just going to use some nominal values. So we're going to program CV3 to a value of 25, and then CV4 to a value of 75. And this just gives you some basic nominal values. So let's move in reverse. We'll go to speed step 10. You can kind of hear how that chuff was a little bit more labored at the beginning, but then it settled in fairly steady as you're running it even. And we cut our throttle. You hear the chuff back off as it coasts to a stop. One of the cool features that's built into the Tsunami decoders is the application of brakes. In the real world, the locomotive itself has brake shoes that will press against the wheels to slow the train to a stop. When it's tied into a train, you have those thousands of tons behind it, and using the brake shoes on the locomotive would wear out quickly if you were using that to stop the train. So the Tsunami 2 actually does implement the second braking called automatic or train brake, and that uses the shoes on the freight cars to slow the train down so that, again, you're not wearing the brake shoes on the locomotive. So let's set both of these up. So using our momentum, we've put a little bit of momentum into the locomotive to take a little bit of time to get to the commanded speed step. Now in CV 117 and 118, you can set the braking rate for the independent, and you can set the braking rate for the automatic. What I like to do is use the independent to stop the locomotive more quickly, so I can use that during my switching moves, back and forth, use the independent. Then once I build my train, you use F12 to toggle into train brake mode, and you'll hear the compressor cycle as it's charging the train line on the cars behind it. And then once the train line is charged up and ready to go, you release the brakes and start to move. You'll hear the sounds that are associated with the automatic brakes, and you can now implement the second braking rate, which I like to do a little bit longer to simulate the heavier cars behind it. So let's see it in action. Alright, so let's release the brakes. Right now we're moving forward at speed step 10, but our independent brakes are set. So we're going to release the brakes. You hear the bail off. You hear the DDE kick in as it works a little harder to get started. We'll apply the brakes. Bring the locomotive to a stop. Change directions. Now we're going to go pick up this car over here. And the one thing you can do is you can feather the brake on and off. So you can toggle the F11 on and off so that you can do a perfect couple every time. There we are, we're tied in. So we're going to